In this video, we're going to talk about two very important data types in JavaScript and other programming languages, which are arrays and objects. We're going to do in this video, we're just going to kind of look at what they are, and in the next videos, we'll look a little bit more at how they work and what to do with them. So this will be sort of more of a basic overview of how to make them and what they're for. So arrays, to start with, are used to store sequences of data. One of the important things about arrays is to think about what are some collections of information that make sense to put into some kind of series or sequence. So for example, days of the week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they happen in an order that's expected. Months of the year, January, February, March, etc. If you're looking at statistics and you're collecting data over a certain number of time, like enrollment figures for Miami University, if we were to look at those for the last 5 years, we might put those numbers in an array, and those happens to be about 20,000 per year. So we would see 5 years ago from now would be, if we were thinking from fall 2023, five years ago would be fall 2018. So the first number in the array would be the enrollment number from 2018. The next one would be the enrollment number from 2019, and so on. Other things that kind of make sense to store as sequences, if you're thinking about positional information, a lot of times in 3D graphics, things are positioned in space as an XYZ set of numbers. And so we sort of always think about those three numbers in that order, XYZ. Things that would not make sense to be stored as a sequence or a series would be characteristics about a person. You know, if you wanted to think about what are identifying characteristics of a person, they have hair color, eye color, height, weight, all those kinds of things. And those characteristics don't really belong in a sequence. They don't make sense in a specific order. So series and sequences, think about them as being things that you could organize in an order that makes sense to go from one to the next in that predetermined order. Arrays can hold any kind of data, numbers, strings, Boolean, and others that we'll talk about. And you reference individual values in an array by their index, which is their position in the array, which starts at 0. So I've set up a really simple little code pen here where I have an H1 element that's currently empty, just so we don't have to look at the output of these arrays in the console. We can look at them somewhere else. I'm going to declare this array with the keyword, const, C-O-N-S-T. Now, when we first talked about variables a long time ago at the beginning of the JavaScript stuff, we talked about declaring variables with let. And let is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with using let to declare variables. You use let when you declare a variable that's going to be changed by something else. So for example, if I were to say let x equals 10, and then I wanted to say x equals 11, so I've reassigned the value of 10 to something new, that's okay. What I can't do is say const x equals 10 and then change the value of x. You can see I get a little warning here that there's an error, invalid assignment to const x. So normally with variables we've been using let. Why do we want to use const all of a sudden for arrays? Well, the best practice is to use const whenever you can, whenever you are definitely using data that's not going to be changed, that you're not going to reassign that variable to something new. And the weird thing about arrays is that once you make an array, you can change the values that are inside the array as long as you don't change the array itself. Let me show you what I mean by that. So let's just make an array called days. I start the array with square brackets. That's all you need to do to indicate that it's an array. And I'm going to type in the days of the week. I'll probably just do a few because I'm such a slow typer. And okay, so we'll stop at Wednesday. So what I cannot do now is say days equals Thursday. I can't reassign this variable days to something new. There we go. I was gonna say, where's my warning? Why am I not getting a warning? There we go. I can't say, oh, I don't want you to be an array anymore. I want you to just be a single value. That's changing that original assignment. But what I can do is say days 2 equals Thursday. I can change the thing that's in the second place of the array, or I should say index 2, which is actually the third place, 0, 1, 2. I can change this. So this is now, if I were to log this entire array to the console, I know I said we weren't going to use the console, but I want to do this just so we can see the full array. I've just changed the second value in the array. The index 2 value in the array, which is the third value. Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Wednesday. So I've reassigned that one place in the array to something new. That's okay with const. You just can't change the whole array to something completely different, to a different value, a different type of data. All right, so what I just did there was reference the index number. If I want to look at only a single element in the array, let's do this now in our h1 element. So I can use const for declaring this this variable that points to this h1 tag that I have up here, because I'm never going to change that. So even though we've been using let before, try to use const for this stuff. We're going to say const, what is that called? Output document.get element by ID. I don't know why I spaced there. Output. And what I'm going to do, just so we don't have to look at the console all the time, is set the inner text of output to be one of the days. So again, I reference the item in the array by its index number. Days 0 is the first item in the array. There's the word Sunday. That pulled that out of the first that first spot, which is index 0. Index 1 is going to be Monday. Index 2 is going to be Tuesday, and so on and so forth. So referencing the individual items in the array by their index, and that starts at 0 and goes to, there's 4 items here. So since I start at 0, 3 is going to be the last one. Okay, next item. Objects. Objects are kind of like arrays. They are used to store multiple pieces of data, but you store them, instead of by index, you store them as key value pairs. So we're not talking about things in a sequence. We're talking more about collections of properties, collections of characteristics that belong together, but maybe don't fall into a specific order. I used the example of a person before, of what would not, like characteristics of a person, of what would not fit well into an array. Talking about my hair color, my eye color, my height, all that. It doesn't really make sense in an array, but it would make sense in an object, because I can tell, by using a key, I can say what each of those values means. Hair color, brown. Eye color, brown. Height, 5'10", I think I am. I can use the key to specify what that data actually means. It acts as a reference to provide some meaning about what that value is. So let's write an object, and I'm going to write a different kind of, instead of days, let's say my car. Okay, I have an old car that I'm hopefully replacing soon, but a car is another thing that has characteristics that don't really fall into a sequence, but they do describe something. They're like different properties about one object. You declare objects with curly brackets, and because they take up more space, it's conventional to start your first key value pair right on the next line. So what are some things you would know about a car? There's the make, which is the manufacturer. I have a Toyota, separated by commas. We've got the model. I have a Yaris. It's a tiny little hatchback. We have the year. And now I've been putting in strings so far, right, with quotation marks, but the year makes sense as a number, and I don't have to do anything different about that. I just put in a number. It knows that it's a number. Make, model, year. I've got color, which is silver. Oh, sorry, that's a string. I think that's plenty, right? So I have these 4 characteristics about this car, and if I want to get one of them out, I'm going to reference its key instead of its index. So the key is referenced by dot notation, where I use the name of the object separated by a dot with the key that I'm trying to look at. So output dot inner text is, if we want to get Toyota, we would say my car dot make. There's Toyota. My car dot model. And finally, let's do one more, my car dot year 2010. So I can read out those individual elements by referencing their key value using dot notation. Now here's where things get a little bit confusing, a little bit sort of complicated, is putting objects in arrays. So having a collection of things that all have their own collections of characteristics. I'll keep going with just the car analogy here. Let's say const cars. And if I'm going to start an array, I need square brackets. So notice what I've done here. I've started with square brackets, and the very first thing in my array is going to be this object. Put a second thing in the array. I'll put a comma after this object and make a second one. Let's make another, I'm just gonna have to make this up. Honda, let's say another tiny hatchback, the Honda Fit. Make up a year. I think they still make these, but we'll just say 2013, and color is black. Okay, so I have two objects that are in this array called cars. If I want to look at, what's my warning here? Let's see, my car is not defined. Oh, right, because I still have, this is my car.year. Now, if I want to look at a single one, let me comment this out. And I'll log. Sometimes I use console log because an object and an array would not look very good here in the HTML. So we're going to console.log cars 0. What do you expect to see here? Think about that for a second. If I'm asking for the first item in the array cars, what's going to be in the console? If I scroll past my errors here, it is that first object. It printed that whole thing, right? Toyota Yaris 2010 silver. Let's look at, let me clear the console here. Let's look at the second thing. Okay, cars 1 is that whole second object, the thing that's at index 1, which is the Honda Fit. Now, what if I want to get one characteristic, one property from the second item in the array? I can just use now dot notation after cars1 dot make. It's going to log Honda. Let's put this now that we have just a single clean value, let's put this now in the H1. Output inner text equals cars1. So second item in the array, the thing that's at index 0. Notice this is object. That's why I didn't do this the first time. We need to look at a single property if we want it to actually display nicely as text inside of this H1 element. There we go. There's Honda, model, Fit, change it to car 0. We expect to see Yaris. There it is. So these two pieces, we're going to stop here with these two new data types. That's just kind of how they're made and how you can sort of read the different values out of those. What's really powerful about these is they can make things much more flexible in your coding. Once you start to learn how to deal with collections of data, then instead of having to write out all of the individual HTML, all the individual pieces of code that you need for something on a site, you can partially automate it. You can say, hey, for as many objects as there are in this array, I want you to make a profile card or a blog entry or whatever it is. You can sort of generate that automatically from this collection of data. We'll look at that a little bit more in some following videos. For now, that's all about objects and arrays.